Yo, everybody. I'm just going to freeform this. I'm not going to edit the video or anything like that, but this video is just going to be a quick kind of discussion from my POV and things that I've been thinking about as far as combat Blink is concerned, or I guess just Blink, whatever you want to call it, in Smite 2. TLDR, in Smite 2, Blink can be used mid-animation, and it can be used in CC Immune Ultimates so far. Um, the devs, I believe, have made it clear that it's not an intended change, and I would expect them to revert it. But there's a lot of pushback on social media, and I'm sure other channels, for people saying maybe it should stay and that it's interesting and cool. And I want to start off by saying that I do think that more game interactions and mechanics that kind of make things more interesting is generally good from my POV. Now, a lot of pros are going to like this because things that may be unfair, although we do complain a lot, um, things that may be unfair, we kind of like can adjust to those things. You know, we've been at the like forefront of like crazy meta changes in the past, and we just learn how to deal with this stuff. It's very rare that like something is so crazy that we literally can't deal with it or come up with any counterplay. You know, for example, in Smite 2, Ymir can like charge his ult and blink on somebody mid ult charge and like kind of like nuke you, but like realistically, like you can react to that if you know he can do it. It's just new, so that's what's surprising about it. Like Chalk can charge his ult up and then blink in the middle of his ult, but if you know he can do that, like now we don't expect that in Smite 1. Like we're not used to it. But if you know that it can happen, you can counterplay it. And that's what a lot of pros are going to say is like, don't say you can't counterplay it. And that's why I think what gets a lot of pros like going with this conversation is saying you can't deal with it is kind of ridiculous so far. What I want to do is add some kind of like more context to the nuance of this. Um, One is I think that there's a lot of problem characters, and now the first argument people are going to say is just disable Blink on those characters. And I just want to say this to you people. Do you think about what you're saying when you say stuff like that? When you say just disable on those characters, uh, for you that sounds really easy because you just turn it off, click a button and turn it off. But it obviously doesn't just work that way. A lot of times they're not going to know 100% if it should or shouldn't be turned off, and it's going to have to be tested if it's okay or not, and then they're going to have to get feedback, and then they're going to have to implement it, or they're going to have to implement it in a certain way so that it works on that character. I mean, you've got characters like Daji, that's obviously complicated. Can you blink with the pillar up? People are probably going to say disable it, but maybe it's okay. Maybe if it's a long cooldown, you can just do that every so often, but then maybe you have to nerf Daji ult to the ground or make it like weaker. You can only chain one or two people or something to compensate for being able to do that. And obviously it just makes things really complicated, and then maybe your ult isn't very useful without blink. They have to bounce around that like specific interaction. um Another one like Maui and the sky characters, can Freya blink while she's like up in the sky? Can Thor blink like as he's like landing before he actually like fully lands, or like while he's channeling his ult to like get out of danger? I don't know. Some of these might not be issues. Like some of them might be like perfectly potentially balanced. And honestly, a lot of people are also going to say that blink, um, you're not just going to blink is an item now, right? That's another thing I forgot to mention. Blink is an item, not a relic. So you have to dedicate an entire item slot to it. Um, and I think that that is a good point, but I don't think we should be that concerned about the specific stats that are on the item right now. I think it is important for the future to be evaluating that effect of being able to blink mid animation and CC Immune Ultimate potentially, as a whole in our worst case scenarios, because we're gamers in 2024. We're gonna find the absolute worst, well, best depending on how you look at it, way to abuse those interactions, and people are gonna get really, really, really good at it really fast, and it will become problematic far faster than you would imagine. People will be blinking right before their animation goes off, no problem, in a week's time. People who play the game a lot and who are pretty good with the game. Smite is a big field game, so people are naturally going to be good at making those changes. So I don't want. A lot of the discussion I've seen a lot of people say you're not going to just build blank to do that. But the thing is, in a 6-item build, if there's a really strong interaction with Blink on your particular character, you're probably going to find a way to fit it because you can just win the game off like some crazy interaction like that. Like Smite typically works that way. Who knows with Smite 2 necessarily, but it's just something that I want everyone to think about. I don't think the stats on the item should matter, basically, TLDR for that point. So I just want you to consider these problem characters. It's not as simple as just don't make it work on that character, don't make it work for that ability. That's really confusing, not only for the designers, for new players, even for us veterans while we're integrating all the characters back into the game that everyone's probably going to be playing once it's actually like in motion. The other thing that I really want to talk about is why do we have windups, right? Abilities have windups for a reason, and they vary in length and how they limit you for a reason. Um, they could have made Ymir be able to cast his freeze without having that like stutter set forever. They could have done that, but it's a design decision that they feel like is important for counterplay that they have it in place. And that's not to say there would be no counterplay if he was moving, right? That's not what we're saying. We're saying it is intended by the designers that there is counterplay in that specific ability that they designed within the space of the game. What do I mean by that? I basically mean the designers want the windup to be there. Plain and simple. So when you give someone the ability to not have the windup, um, and that's even a possibility at all, that poses a big problem from a game design POV from how I see it. Now I'm not a game designer, you know, I'm and in a way I'm speaking out of my ass, but I know a lot about Smite, and I can just say that the windups are important. Like Sun Wukong's first ability doesn't just you don't press the button and the damage happens. You press the ability, the sound cue lines up. There's a time of the animation coming down, and it hits the ground. And that's really important because you hear the sound from behind you. You can, Achilles 3 dash out of the way, jump, Aegis, whatever. I mean, Aegis is in this might too, but you get what I mean. You have time to react. Um, and they make the characters with that in mind, right? That you can interact with other things. Blink potentially is on a very long cooldown. Again, I really don't want you guys to think about that too much because they need to consider what will happen in these specific scenarios because it's all encompassing to what's happening in the game. You can't. I don't believe in the argument that it's a long cooldown, it doesn't matter. That's basically what I'm saying. I don't buy into that. If you do, and that's your perspective, and you think it's perfectly fine, that's okay. You can comment and let me know I'm an idiot. I understand not everyone's going to have the same POV. But I personally think you're making things very difficult by giving people an opportunity to remove a windup. And that kind of brings me into my next point is that a lot, and this is what I've seen a lot of people say is other games like League. Now I don't necessarily play League, but I know other games that even aren't League have situations or like interactions like this where you can use a blink or a flash mid animation. And it's not necessarily a bad point, but Smite has never been that way. And that's not to say we can't change, but what for sure will have to happen is we will have to work backwards with every character that comes to make sure that they can operate appropriately with that interaction. That's a lot of work. Working backwards. If we knew, like, if the game designers knew you could do that and they're designing a character, they would make different decisions. That's my point. People would make different decisions knowing, like, hey, this is an initiator character. Like, imagine they made Daji right now. She's a new character, knowing you could blink during CC Immune ultimates and animations. She would look completely different. And they wouldn't make a character and say, well, we're going to make Daji, but we're just going to disable Blink on her because that wouldn't make any sense, right? That wasn't in the scope of the game. So that helped them come to the design that they have. So it's a bit complex, but I basically just, my point here is that I think it's going to be too much work. From my last hearing and understanding, they want to add a new character from Smite 1 into Smite 2 once they have all the wheels turning and all the, the base game is basically ready to go, and they can just start implementing characters and put more effort into that. They want to do it every 2 weeks. Now, I don't know if it's gonna be true. I was skeptical of that even when I heard it the first time. But let's say that it's even close to that, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Um, they don't have a lot of time to test a lot of this stuff. And now they're gonna have to figure it out with potentially like new items and stuff. But something as like I don't want to say game breaking, but like game altering, like being able to blink in mid animation and CC mutant ults, is gonna make them have to do a lot more backwards work. And I don't want them to have to do backwards work. I want them to do forwards work. I want them to be able to I don't want them to make the character like when they're implementing the character, I don't want their folks to be like, we just need the character to work. I want them to be able to like come up with new stuff for the characters they come in, maybe alter some things. I don't want them to have to be worried about like, is this character gonna work even within the frame of the game? Because we've got interactions like being able to blink that we didn't have, blink an animation that we didn't have before. Um, Again, not a game designer, but just thinking about it, it sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like a freaking nightmare. So, anyway, that's my general thoughts. I know it's a big hodgepodge. I'm not going to edit the video, but I kind of wanted to give some more perspective. I saw some people kind of getting bullied for having their opinion that maybe it's not a good idea. It definitely sounded like in the later half of this video that I don't think it's a good idea. I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, but if I had to choose and if I was working at Hyros now, I certainly would not want to deal with it. I certainly would not think it was worth our time. I would want to put our time elsewhere. Because this is an opportunity for them to do a lot of cool new things. I don't want them to spend their time fixing shit. I want them to make their time making new shit, right? That's my opinion. But it could be cool. Right now, the characters that are in the game in Smite 2, I don't think it's a problem. Chalk and Ymir with Blink, go ahead. But I think it's just going to get more complicated as time goes on. I just don't think it's worth it. I think we can make the game interesting and add cool new counterplay and other, and in my opinion, healthier ways. Thanks for watching. If you watched to the end of this video, if you think I'm an idiot and you've been boiling the whole time waiting to say it, I guess, go ahead. It's just my opinion, I'm sure I missed plenty of nuances. I'm sure I didn't say everything the best way I could have, but I just wanted to make a quick video and get it out there without just word vomiting onto Twitter. So, yeah, there it is. That's kind of my general opinions as of now. They may change on Combat Blink and Smite 2 and the way it currently operates. And yeah, I'll catch you guys around, huh?